Okay, so this week's Parsha is Parshas Vayishlach, begins on page 171. That's Bereshit chapter 32, verse 4. It says, Then Yaakov sent angels ahead of him to Esau his brother to the land of Seir, the fields of Edom. So now the context is that Yaakov had departed from the house of his father-in-law Lavan after being there some 20 odd years, and he's headed back home to the land of Israel. And remember, he had gone there for two reasons: to find a wife, which he did. He actually has four of them now, and to escape from his brother Esau, who wanted to kill him. So now he's trying to prevent that from happening, his brother Esau from killing him. So first he sends angels ahead of him to Esau his brother to land of Seir, the field of Edom. He charged them, saying, Thus shall you say to my lord to Esau, So said your servant Yaakov, I have sojourned with Lavan, and have lingered until now. I have acquired oxen and donkeys, flocks, servants, and maidservants, and I am sending to tell you, my lord, to find favor in your eyes. Okay, so that's the first thing he did. And it continues that in verse 7, the angels returned to Yaakov, saying, We came to your brother to Esau, moreover, is heading towards you, and has 400 men with him. So he's not messing around. And he sent these servants to find out what the mindset of Esau was, or these angels to find out what the mindset of Esau was. And they told him, we came to your brother to Esau, and he's heading towards you with 400, and 400 men are with him. So there's a few things here. First of all, it says that thus shall you say to my lord to Esau. He's being very he's really subjugating himself. He's really it sounds like he's flattering him. Thus shall you say to my lord to Esau, and we'll see later he bows down, and we'll talk about it a little more there. But the Ramban says that this was a custom there, that the oldest brother was treated almost like the father. He was treated as like the Lord in a sense. He was treated as the master of the household, almost as much as the father was. And also it says here that I have sojourned with Lavan, I have lingered until now. So the Medrash says here that he was saying I've sojourned with Lavan, that he was trying to make a statement to Esau, and that was that you're angry at me because I stole the blessings from Yaakov. He actually didn't steal, like we've talked about, that he really bought them. But Esau was angry because from Esau's perspective, he did. And we'll see in this week's Parsha, he finally agreed to it. But he was angry at him. He wanted to kill him. What Yaakov was telling him is that, look at what that brought me. You think like I got these blessings, I'm living in bliss. The blessings were that you'll eat from the dew of the heaven and the fat of the land, and you're going to have the land and all this good stuff. Look, I haven't even been living in the land. I've been sojourning, meaning I don't have a proper home. I've been living in someone else's house, my father-in-law, my in-laws' house, for 20 years. Yes. And he was trying to tell him that the blessings weren't fulfilled, or at least weren't fulfilled by him. And that's not what you want. You, Asaph, don't want to live a life like this. And okay. So now it continues in verse 8 on page 173. Yaakov became very frightened, and it distressed him. So he divided the people with him and the cattle, herds, and camels into two camps. For he said, if Esau comes to the one camp and strikes it down, then the remaining camp shall survive. And then Yaakov said, God of my father Avram and God of my father Yitzchak, Hashem who said to me, return to your land and to your relatives, and I will do good with you. I've been diminished by all the kindness, by the truth that you have done for your servant. For with my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I've become two camps. Rescue me, please, from my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come and strike me down, mother and children. And you had said, I will surely do good with you. I'll make your offspring like the sand of the sea, which is too numerous to count. So the first thing he did is he divided the people into two camps. He started making military preparations and thinking about how will we survive this encounter if he's coming with ill intent. How will we survive this? And he decided to split up the camp. So even if one is attacked, the family will still survive. And the next thing he did was prayer. And you see how he introduces his prayer is the same way that we do. And this is a theme that we find throughout the Torah, that the prayer begins, God of my father Abraham, God of my father Yitzchak. That we begin our prayers referencing the patriarchs. And Yaakov, not here, Yaakov being himself, he's not referencing himself, or he kind of is, where he says, Hashem who said to me, return to my land. He's calling him his own God. But he says, the God of Avram, God of Yitzchak, which is how we also introduce our tefillah, our prayers. When we say the Shemona Esrei, we start off, blessed are you Hashem, God of Avram, God of Yitzchak, and God of Yaakov. So that's how we learn from our patriarchs how to pray. And he also says in verse 12, rescue me, please, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esav. And we find this expression also calling him my brother Esav, also when the angels report that it says, the angels returned and said, we came to your brother, to Esav. So he calls him his brother to Esav, as like almost two different people. And I saw the commentaries say that with the angels he was asking, one of the things he sent the angels to do was to find out what intention he was coming with. Were his intentions as a brother, or were his intentions as Esav? And their answer was, we came to your brother, to Esav. And they were saying there were different factors that indicated each one. That some things that we saw made us think that he was coming as a brother in friendship, and some things made us think that he was coming as Esav, as the wicked, out for destruction. And here, in his prayer, he said, save me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esav. What he was saying is that either case, there's a danger. The danger of Esav is obvious, that he's coming to destroy, he's coming to fight. So save me from that fight. But he also says, save me from my brother. If he comes with brotherly love to telling me that he wants to join with me and wants us to mix and to have brotherhood and fraternity, that's also dangerous, because and that might be even more dangerous, and that's the truth throughout our history between us and Esav, which that's really what this parsha is all about, is this is setting a precedent for the future of Yaakov's descendants and Esav's descendants, and that is that sometimes Esav attacks us, comes at us trying to kill us, and sometimes they come at us as brothers trying to assimilate us, and each one carries its own dangers. And he asked Hashem, he davened to Hashem to rescue him from each one. So these are the first two that he did. He did military preparations and prayer. And next, the tribute. In verse 14, he spent the night there, and then he took from that which had come in his hand a tribute to Esav his brother. 200 she-goats, 20 he-goats, 200 ewes, that's female sheep, and 20 rams, 30 nursing camels with their colts, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 she-donkeys, and 10 he-donkeys. And he put in his service charge, each drove separately, and said to his servants, pass on ahead of me, leave a space between drove and drove. And he told the first one, saying, when my brother Esav meets you and asks you, saying, who are you, where are you going, and whose are these that are before you? You shall say, your servant Yaakov's is the tribute sent to my lord, to Esav, and behold, he himself is behind us. And he instructed each one to say that statement, and because he's trying to appease him. So he instructed them that they should go and leave space between each one, so when one comes, he can't see what's coming next. So it feels like forever. It feels like if you can't see the end of something, like you see a train and you can't see the end, it feels like forever. If you can see the end, at least you know what you're waiting for. But if you don't know what you're waiting for, you don't see the end, so it may as well be forever at that moment. So in Esav, things keep on coming and coming and coming. It just grows in his heart, this gift that his brother Yaakov is sending him. And these three things that Yaakov did, he made military preparations, he prayed, and he sent a gift. He tried to appease him. So this again is teaching us that when we have encounters with Esav, we can't just depend on our own merit, say we're pretty righteous, we're doing pretty good in we have a good relationship with God, so we don't have anything to worry about. We have to think about this, and we have to do our hishtadlus. We have to put in our effort, which involves these three things. First of all, we have to think about what do we do if it comes to a battle and we have to daven to Hashem and we have to try to avoid the fight, do what we can to avoid the fight, as they say, that the best war is the one that you don't fight. Okay, so moving on. In verse 23, but he got up that night and took his 2 wives, his 2 handmaids, his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Yabok, and he took with them, he had crossed over the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So he crossed over that river. And now in verse 25, as Alan referenced, page 175, and Herbie.
That's right.
Yaakov was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. This is the bottom of page 175. When he perceived that he could not overcome him, he struck the socket of his hip. So Yaakov's hip socket was dislocated as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for dawn has broken." And he said, "I will not let you go until you bless me." So he said, so the angel said, this man, I should say, said, "What is your name?" He replied, "Yaakov." And in verse 29, he said, "No longer will it be said your name is Yaakov, but Israel, for you have striven with the divine and with man and had overcome." So Yaakov is it means to heal. It's a reference to Yaakov having Esav being born first and Yaakov grabbing onto his heel, like kind of pulling him back. And he says, "Now it's Yisrael, for you have beaten divine and man." And verse 30, then Yaakov inquired, and he said, "Divulge, if you please, your name." And he said, "Why then do you inquire of my name?" And he blessed him there. So yeah, in verse 31, so Yaakov called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen the divine face to face, yet my life was spared. The sun rose for him as he passed Peniel, he was limping on his hip. Therefore, the children of Israel are not to eat the displaced sinew on the hip socket to this day. This is what we call the Gid Anasha. It's usually translated as the sciatic nerve. No, because he struck Yaakov's hip socket on the displaced sinew. Yes?
I can't understand.
Yeah?
It's because of little incident.
Yes. So I'll try to give a little more meaning to that.
I know that, but suppose the angel not strike Yaakov.
Yeah.
Socket. And the hip was not the
yes,
but everything proceeded as usual. In the high,
perhaps, except like I said, it wasn't just it happened to be that that's what happened. This encounter between Yaakov and this man, this angel, that and just this our sages say that this was the spiritual embodiment of Esav, of the nationality, the nation of Esav, of Edom. So that it's more than just one thing that happened, but it's telling us what the destiny of our 2 groups for the rest of time. So it's not just the angel happened to dislocate his hip, but that angel dislocating his hip is telling us something, and it has meaning beyond that fight. So our sages say, so, and just as an aside, if your issue is the T-bone and the filet mignon,
actually, yeah, I believe it's sirloin.
And the sirloin, yeah. So I've read, I think it was the OU, who said that that's actually a misconception, that the reason why we can't eat that is because of the Giranasha, because of the sciatic nerve. They say that that's actually not that difficult to get out. You have to get out all the tributaries and the fat around it, which is a little more difficult. They say that that's more doable. The real issue is the chalev, is the prohibited fats that mostly encase the organs, and there are some that actually run through the hindquarters of the animal. And that chalev, Sid calls it suet. Taught me it's suet when he gives his birds.
A lot of
yeah.
Find rather disgusting.
Yes.
Yet it's kosher.
Right.
To be used to be more common. I've always liked.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there are lots of things that are kosher that people find, that some people find, even like a lung is very kosher, but I think it's illegal to sell it in the U.S. as food. Right.
No, if you cook it,
no. People eat lung. It's
mix it with other stuff.
I mean, people eat it as like mixed with other organs, as organ meat pies or whatever. Right. Right.
In itself, it's
Right, and I think one of the reasons why they make it illegal to sell is because it's pretty much a filter. Meaning what it does is all the toxins that you're breathing get caught up in the lungs. So, but we eat the kidneys and the liver, which are filters also, right? That's what they are. Yeah. Find it on any restaurant. Right. Well, people find it disgusting, and some people love it. Okay, but anyway, so let's move to the one approach. There are many approaches to this incident with the angel. I'll take one of them, mostly, is that like I said, that this was our sages say that this man that Yaakov wrestled with was the angel, was the spiritual embodiment of Esav, of the nation of Esav, Adam. And this wrestling match was the wrestling match that we have throughout our history between the Jewish people and Esav, Edom, which is Rome, Western civilization. And the wrestling till the break of dawn represents the coming of Mashiach, and we're fighting back and forth that entire time. And then it says, when he perceived he could not overcome him, that Esav was fighting with Yaakov, and he found that he couldn't beat Yaakov. So what did he do? He struck the socket of his hip and dislocated it. So I think it's the Kli Yakar, but I know some of the commentaries say that let's see, what did I write? Who said a lot of times I don't actually write in my sources. Yeah, that it represents that Yaakov represents the Torah, those who study the Torah. That Yaakov is the embodiment of emes, of the divine attribute of truth, which is represented, which is the Torah. So that's Yaakov, and so the hip, as some of us have discovered, is that's what supports our entire body. That the hip is the connection between the upper part of our body and the lower part of our body, and when that goes, the support system for the body is gone. I know you've had a replacement. Yes. Yeah, and I know physical therapists and orthopedists, whatever doctors say, that almost pain all over the body. They say that one of the best ways is to strengthen the hips or to increase flexibility in the hips, whatever it is, because a lot of times the pain is coming from the hips not supporting the body right, so everything's out of whack. And but so what do the hips represent? Yaakov is the Torah. The hips represent the support for the Torah. That's the supporters of the Torah. And Asa found that he could not touch and could not beat those who study the Torah, but he did find that he could injure, he could cause distress to those who support the Torah, and try to cause you could cause a disconnect, cause a disconnect there, and that's what this is, the dislocation of the hip is representing, and us not eating the Gidanash and not eating the sciatic nerve is a reminder of this. Is that Esav, first of all, he could injure us temporarily. This was a temporary injury; it wasn't permanent, and that Esav could injure us. He could cause us pain, but forgot again. Yeah, Esav could cause us pain, but he can't destroy us. That'll never happen. And okay, so everyone's still there. Good. And additionally, it's to teach us that we have to that Esav can't touch the Torah, but Esav could touch the supporters of Torah and could get in their way, get in between us. Okay. So then they have this wrestling until the dawn is broken, and it says that he said, "Bless me." Yaakov said, "Bless me." I'm sorry, the angel. I just lost myself. Oh yeah, before that. In verse 27, the top of page 177, then he said, "Let me go, for dawn has broken." And he said, "I'll not let you go until you bless me." What's this? Why does he have to go since the dawn has broken? Is he like a vampire that he has to go to? Well, you're in the right track. But is he a vampire that like the sunlight destroys him? So our sages say, yeah. So Rashi brings a Gemara in Chulin that he had to go because he has to say the Shira of the morning, the song of praise to Hashem sung by the angels in the morning. And our sages say that there was that every angel has one opportunity where it sings the Shira, that it sings the song of praise to Hashem, and this was the day for this angel. And that's, he was begging Yaakov, let me go, because it's my turn finally. It's my one shot. And that's why he blessed Yaakov to let him go. But so my Rosh Yeshiva asked, or Chaim Bressler asked, that what kind of coincidence is this? This day that the Esav is wrestling with Yaakov happens to be that day that like it's always that your opportunity is when you can't get there, like the train is late, you missed the bus, that you can't find your shoes. That's the day that it's his turn to say Shira. So he answered that it's not a coincidence, and that what Shira is about is when is the turn for an angel to say Shira, or any creation of Hashem to say Shira, is when it did its job. That every creation of Hashem is created for a purpose. It has especially an angel, and our sages say an angel has one purpose and one purpose only, and can't really do two jobs, because that's not what it was created for. So, and when its purpose is done, then it did its job, and that's when it sings its Shira. So this angel of Esav, our sages say the angel, the spiritual embodiment of Esav, is the angel of death, and it's the Satan, it's the tempter, which is the same thing. That it's the one that tempts us to sin. But its job is not to cause us to sin, because if that was the case in this fight with Yaakov, it lost. It didn't do its purpose because it injured Yaakov. It didn't beat Yaakov. Yaakov beat it. But this is telling us that the job of the Satan is not to win, not to beat us. The job of the Satan is to lose. Meaning and this is an important principle, is that the Hashem didn't create the Satan to get us. We don't believe in a devil that's acting against Hashem's will. That's not possible, because Hashem's will, Hashem only allows to have. Hashem's the only being that has power, and only allows to happen what Hashem wants to happen, or what Hashem allows to happen, I should say. And there's no power that could stand up against Hashem. And what the Satan's job is to challenge us in a way that we could overcome it. And we have the free choice to either overcome it or not overcome it. But his job and its hope is not that we lose. It's the hope of the Satan is that we win. And at this point, when the angel of death was beaten, or I should say the angel of Esav, the Satan was beaten by Yaakov, that's when it could finally sing its Shira, that I did my job. I put a challenge for Yaakov and for the Jewish people, for the Bnei Yisrael, and they succeeded. I gave them a challenge, and they succeeded in that challenge. That's when it did its job. And that's why now it's time for it to say Shira. Okay, so now moving on. He finally has an encounter with Esav, and on page 177, chapter 33, Yaakov raised his eyes and saw, behold, Esav was coming. With him were 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel into handmaids, and he put the handmaids and the children first, Leah the children next, Rachel and Yosef last. Then he himself went ahead of him, bowed earthward 7 times until he reached his brother. Again, we see this great subjugation, and how much he's lowering himself before his brother. So he bowed 7 times. Just as an aside, the Baal HaTurim says this bowing down 7 times is a reference to the verse in Mishlei, the Sheva Yipol Tzadik V'kam, that the righteous fall 7 times and get up. And our sages say that doesn't mean that the difference between the righteous and the wicked is when the wicked fall, they stay down, and the righteous could get off the mat, and even if they fall 7 times, they get off the mat. But in order to become righteous, part of the process is becoming righteous is that process of falling down and getting up. Because without the falling down, they wouldn't have had that growth of getting up off the mat. And the losing and the challenges and our failures, and our failures are part of our journey and part of our growth and without those failures and getting off the mat from those failures, if we wouldn't have fallen to begin with, we wouldn't have had that opportunity for growth. Okay, but he bowed down 7 times, and the Rav Dessler says about this great subjugation that Yaakov is showing, that he's lowering himself so much. It's almost like he's like not, they say, be a man, got to stand up for yourself. And Yaakov, instead of standing up for himself, is just subjugating himself, lowering himself. So he says that's a criticism that the Torah world gets, is that historically we haven't fought for ourselves really. That when we're encountering challenges from the nations of the world, we beg and we plead and we pay off. And that's a criticism, he says, that we've received. But he says when we're bowing down and we're lowering ourselves, we're not lowering ourselves. And Yaakov wasn't bowing down before Esav, or he was bowing to the Shekhinah. He was bowing to the divine plan that put him in this position. And he says that's a big part of that is recognizing where we are, what our station is in life, and why that's the case. We have to recognize that for whatever reason, and we have to search ourselves for what the reason is, but that Hashem put us in this position where this person has power over me, or this nation has power over me, and we have to bow to the divine plan that's the case. But he says, those who criticize us tend to be those who imitate the nations, the culture that surrounds us the most, and they say that imitation is the greatest form of flattery. Okay, so anyway, so he bowed down 7 times. In verse 4 at the bottom of page 177, Esav ran towards him, embraced him, fell upon his neck. Oh, sorry, 1 second. What I wanted. The view here is a little messed up. There we go. Okay. Embraced him, fell upon his neck, and kissed him, and they wept. So there's 2 opinions in the Gemara. If he genuinely, if he came to bite him, that there's one opinion. In the Torah, there are dots on this, and he kissed him. There are dots on there. You see in the Hebrew side, there's dots on the word. That one opinion says that Esav's kisses were insincere, and there's even a medrash, like I said, that he was biting him. He was coming in and trying to bite his neck.
Down on every letter.
Yeah. But Rav Shimon Bar Yochai says that is that in that moment the mercy and love for his brother was aroused, and he hugged him and kissed him. Okay, and he saw the women and children, and asked, who are these? And he said, the children whom God has graciously given to your servant. And everyone bowed down. And then in verse 8 on page 179, he asked, what did you intend by that whole camp that I met? Remember that all the gift that he sent. He said, like, what was your purpose there? And he answered, to gain favor in my Lord's eyes. So the commentaries asked, and Van asked that, well, what was his question? Didn't Yaakov tell the angels who were bringing the gifts to tell Esav exactly the purpose? That we're coming from your servant, from Yaakov, and these are gifts because he wants to find favor in your eyes. And he's on their tribute. So why is Esav asking, what were these about? He told them to tell him. So Ramban says perhaps Esav was such an arrogant person that he wouldn't even give these servants, he saw these people as servants, he wouldn't even give them at the time of day. And he didn't even, like Yaakov said, when Esav asked you, what's this about? Tell him this. Esav didn't ask them. He just ignored them. So Yaakov said to take it. In verse 9, Esav said, I have plenty, my brother, let what you have remain yours. And here, let what you have remain yours, our sages say that this was Esav finally admitting that the brachas belong to Yaakov. He says, let what's yours remain yours. You got the blessings, you bought them for me, and you got them from Yitzchak, they're yours. Let them remain yours. I agree to that. And in verse 10, but Yaakov said, no, I beg of you, if I have now found favor in your eyes, and accept my tribute from me, inasmuch as I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of the divine being, and you are appeased by me. That's a very interesting expression, that I seeing your faces like seeing the face of a divine being. What does that mean? So I say to say that might be referencing that he fought with the angel, that I see you, I saw your angel too, and we met. But I think it's the I'm forgetting where I saw things in this parsha. I don't know why, but this is, I think it's a klayaka, that this is a reference to the Olas Re'iyah, that when we go to visit the Beis Hamikdash, so there's a mitzvah that we have to bring a carbon, we have to bring an offering as part of our visit, and burnt offering. So he was telling Esav that just like when I go to visit the house of God, I bring an offering. So when I go to visit you, I'll bring you a gift as well, because you tell me. He says, "I have plenty." In verse 9, I have plenty, saying God doesn't need my stuff. God has everything, but still, that teaches us that the proper manners is to come bearing a gift. That the same way when we visit God, who has everything, there's nothing that's not from God. Still, we bring an offering. So when I come to see my brother, I haven't seen in 20 years, I bring a gift as well. And he continues, please accept my gift which was brought to you, inasmuch as God has been gracious to me, and inasmuch as I have everything. He urged him, and he had accepted. And from here, the commentaries say, you see the difference between Yaakov and Esav. That Esav said, what did Esav say? He said, I have plenty. In verse 9, I have plenty, I have a lot. Yeshli Rav, I have a lot. Whereas Yaakov said, I have everything. Yeshli Kol. So the commentaries say that the meaning diverges in two different ways, opposite ways. That I have a lot could imply not I could have more, meaning I have a lot. If I had twice as much, I'd be twice as happy. But I have a lot. Whereas Yaakov said, I have everything. There's nothing more I could have. And the difference between Esav and Yaakov is that Esav is always looking for more material possessions, where Yaakov says, whatever I have was given to me by God, and whatever I don't have wasn't given to me by God. So whatever I have is everything that I could possibly have. But the opposite, I say the opposite is also true, and is that I have a lot means I have more than I need. That I have a lot, not I have a good amount. I have a lot. I have more than that. Whereas Yaakov is saying, I have everything, meaning I have everything I could possibly need. I don't have more, but I also don't have less. I don't have less, I should say, but I also don't have more, because Esav just looks at possessions as something to bring himself pleasure, whereas Yaakov sees these as tools. He says, every possession that I have is a tool given to me by Hashem to use in my life of service of Hashem. So if I shouldn't have had it, if I don't have no need for it, I wouldn't have it. So I have everything. I don't have more than I need, because whatever I was given for a reason, and there must be some use, some way that Hashem sees that I can make use of that in my service of Hashem. Okay, Esav said, let's go but together, and Yaakov said, let's travel together. Yaakov said, no, we'll drag you, we'll be a drag on you. We have all these kids and flocks, and we'll slow you down. We'll meet you in Seir. And that's in verse, where is it? In verse 14, let my Lord go ahead of his servant. I'll make my way at my slow pace, according to the gait of the drove before me, and the gait of the children. Gait here, like the walking speed of the children, until I come to my Lord at Seir. And then in verse 16, so Asa started back that day on his way to Seir, but Yaakov journeyed to Sukkot and built himself a house for his livestock. He made shelters. He therefore called the name of the place Sukkot. So you see here that Esav invited him to join him in Seir, and Yaakov told him, yeah, I'll go, but we'll slow you down. So you go ahead and we'll catch up. We'll meet you there. But Yaakov never went there, and he never intended to actually go there. He intended to stop much earlier in Sukkot, and I say to say that this is a sign, this is teaching us that if you're someone is asking where you're going, that it's better to tell them you're going farther than you're actually going, in case they have ill intent. They wait for you there, and you just never actually get there. You show up later. But as we say, Yaakov represents emes and represents the divine truth, And Yaakov was not lying when he said, I'll join you in Seir, I'll go to Seir. And he was referencing in the future when at the end of days, we will in fact go to Seir. We will go to Mount Seir. Let's see if I can find it. I think it's this week's Haftarah. It might be. Here are we? Yeah, so the end of this week's Parsha, that's this week's Haftarah, I'm sorry, on page 1142. So the Haftarah is from Ovadia, who was actually a descendant of Esav, and he was a descendant of converts from Esav. And we read the entire book of Ovadia, which deals with how Hashem will judge Esav, but the Haftarah ends on page 1142, verse 21. Then saviors will ascend Mount Zion to judge Esav's mountain. And that's what Yaakov was telling him. We'll join you. We'll come to your mountain. And when will that be? At this time when the exiled forces of the children of Israel, these saviors will ascend Mount Zion and judge Esav's mountain. That's when we'll go to Mount Seir. Okay. So now the next, Yaakov arrives in Shechem. And in verse 18 on page 181, Yaakov arrived intact at the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan. He was healed. Upon arriving from Padan Aram, he encamped before the city. He bought the parcel of land upon which he pitched his tent from the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 kesitas. He set up an altar there and proclaimed, God, the God of Israel. So I pretty much say this by each place, but there are 3 places in the land of Israel that we find were not conquered by war, but rather were bought. One of them is here, where Yaakov bought this parcel of land before the city of Shechem. One is earlier where Avram bought the cave of Machpelah and for the burial of Sarah. And one is where David bought the Goren Arnon, he bought the threshing floor, which was to be on the Temple Mount, the place where to build the Beis Hamikdash, to build the temple. And Rabbeinu Bachya says that because of the great holiness of these sites, it was inappropriate for them to be conquered by war, and therefore they were bought instead. And so what's the significance of this place in front of Shechem? So our sages say that this is the place of Mount Gerizim and Mount Eval, where when we return to the land of Israel after leaving Egypt, so we received the blessings and curses and reaccepted the Torah and reaccepted the consequences of the blessings of keeping the Torah and the consequences of not keeping the Torah. Okay, next we have this incident of Dinah. So in chapter 34 on page 181, now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had born to Yaakov, went out to look over the daughters of the land. So they'd come to the land of Israel. Now she's looking to meet other girls. Shechem, son of Hamor the Chivite, the prince of the region, saw her. He took her, lay with her, and violated her. He became deeply attached to Dinah, daughter of Yaakov. He loved the maiden and appealed to the maiden's emotions. So Shechem spoke to Hamor, his father, saying, take this girl for a wife. So Yaakov heard about it, waited. He kept silent until his sons came. So Hamor, Shechem's father, went to Yaakov to speak to him. So this is the prince. Yaakov's sons arrived from the field. When they heard, the men were distressed and were fired deeply with indignation, for he had committed an outrage in Israel by lying with the daughter of Yaakov. Such a thing may not be done. In verse 8, Hamor spoke with them, saying, Shechem, my son longs deeply for your daughter. Please give her to him as a wife. And he said, you'll have a good deal with this, and intermarry with us. Give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourself. It seems that the commentaries say that they wouldn't intermarry with people who weren't citizens, foreigners. They wouldn't intermarry with foreigners. He was telling us, we'll adopt you as a local, as a citizen. And among us you shall dwell. The land will be before you. Settle and trade in it, and acquire property in it. let my son marry your daughter, and we'll adopt you into our nation. And he said you'll give a big marriage settlement. And in verse 13 it says, Yaakov's sons answered Shem and his father Hamor cleverly, and they spoke. And they said to them, we cannot do this thing to give our sister to men who is uncircumcised, for that is a disgrace for us. Only on this condition will we acquiesce to you, if you become like us, letting every male among you become circumcised. Then we'll give our daughters to you, take our daughters to ourselves, we will dwell with you, become a single people. But you will not listen to us to be circumcised. We'll take our daughter and go. So the commentaries say, the Ramban says, that Yaakov understood their intention was to not actually go along with this, but they would circumcise themselves, or maybe they wouldn't even go along with it. But even if they did, and then on the third, when they're in pain from the circumcision, they'll raid, grab Dinah, and leave. But they, in fact, maybe didn't even expect that. In no way would they ever do this, but they did, and then they went in and killed everyone in the city. But what's this cleverness? And he answered Shem and his father Hamor cleverly. What's the cleverness? I guess it's that if they do the bris milah, if they circumcise themselves, and now all the men who would be the fighters are handicapped. But the Malbim adds that there's another element to that, and that is that there were really two things that he did wrong. The first is the obvious one, that he raped her, and what was the language used? He defiled. That's not what I'm looking for. Violated her. I should just say that he raped her and then violated her means he sodomized her. So that's the first thing wrong. He kidnapped her, raped her, and sodomized her. And the second thing was that he did that as an uncircumcised person, which that is also, even if it would be willingly, that would be problematic. He's saying we as Jews don't marry uncircumcised people. So, but when they talked to Shechem, they never mentioned anything about the kidnapping and the raping and the sodomizing. They never mentioned that. The only thing they spoke about was the circumcision. So all they said was, give our sister, we can't do this to give our sister to men who is uncircumcised, for that is a disgrace for us. That's all they mentioned. Because if they would have said something about the kidnapping and all that, then they could say we could circumcise ourselves and get rid of that problem, but that other thing is still there, and they would be suspicious. What are they going to do to us to take revenge, to retaliate for that? But because they never mentioned it, so in their mind, that was overlooked. That they forgave us for that. They understand. And if this is the problem, we could deal with that. We could get past the problem. And that was the cleverness that they showed. Okay, so that's what they did. He convinced all the people to go along with this. And in verse 25, and it came to pass on page 185, verse 25, it came to pass on the third day when they were in pain that two of Yaakov's sons, Shimon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword. They came upon the city confidently and killed every male. And Hamor and Shechem, his son, they killed at the point of sword. Then they took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. So they killed everyone in the city. So how could they have killed everyone in the city? What right did they have to do that? And the Orach Chaim says either the people defended, they saw them going after Shechem, who was deserving of death, and the people of the city stood up to defend him, and they had to fight them to get through. And though another approach that he has, what seems to be more with the Ramban goes, is that the people enabled. So it was the society that enabled Shechem to do this. It was saying that he would have never done this. Just grabbed someone who was just as the prince, just grabbing a passerby's daughter and mistreating her like this, if it wasn't something that he understood would be accepted by his society. And that was the reason why that they felt that they could kill the whole city, is because the whole city enabled this. The whole city enabled him to allow him to do that. And it continues, all their wealth, their children, their wives, they took captive. So in verse 27, the children of Yaakov come upon the slain. They plundered the city which had defiled their sister. They took all the captives and plunder and spoils. But then in verse 30, Yaakov said to Shimon and Levi, "You have discomposed me, making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanite and among the Perizzite. I am few in number, and should they band together and attack me, I'll be annihilated, I and my household." So Yaakov did not agree with what they did, and he criticized them and said that this is not something that we should have done, because those around us now will look at us and see us as a threat, and they might band together and attack us. And in verse 31, and they said, "Should we treat our sister like a harlot?" That they so there was this disagreement between Yaakov and the brothers, and you don't see that either of them gave in to the other one. And in fact, if you look at the bracha that Yaakov gave Shimon and Levi on his deathbed on page 277 in Parshas Vayishlach, this is Bereshit chapter 49, verse 5. It says, Shimon and Levi are comrades. Their weapon is a stolen craft. What does that mean? Their weapon is a stolen craft. This is page 277. So Rashi says that that it's stolen from Esav. Says that Esav's the one who's the murderer and the one who fights with his hands, fights with his weapons. That when Yaakov went to Yitzchak for his father for the blessing, so Yitzchak said that the hands are the hands of the voice is the voice of Yaakov, but the hands are the hands of Esav. That Yaakov fights with his voice, with his prayer and Torah, and Esav fights with his hands. So he's saying when you went to kill that city, you weren't acting like yourself. You were acting like Esav, not as a Yisrael. And we see here they disagreed. They said this is a case where it was necessary to fight that way. And I heard from a Rishiva that there are times that it's true. It's always a question of that we can't lose track of who we are, even if we find it necessary to act like Esav. In certain cases, there are some cases where we have to take up arms and fight, but we can't lose track of who we are, and we have to recognize at the time that we're impersonating. That's like the Yaakov going to get the blessings from Yitzchak. We're impersonating Esav, but that's not who we are. We're still Yaakov. Even when we wear the goat skin on our arms and try to dress up as Esav and impersonate Esav, but we're still Yaakov, and we're still the voice of Yaakov. Okay. Now, and the Parsha concludes. There's kind of a lot going on. But in chapter 35, 187, Hashem said to Yaakov, "Arise, go to Beisel and dwell there, and make an altar there to God who appeared to you when you fled from Esav your brother." The Malbim says that this was actually a very strong criticism of Yaakov, and that was that when Yaakov left the land of Israel, he was on his way to Lavan. So he swore an oath to I passed it by. He swore an oath that if you return me, this is on page 147, verse 20. And Yaakov took an oath saying, if God be with me, will guard me on this way that I'm going, will give me bread to eat and clothes to wear, and I return in peace to my father's house, and Hashem will be a God to me. Then this stone which I have set up as a pillar shall become a house of God, and whatever you give me, I shall repeatedly tithe to you. So Hashem was telling him, what are you doing going to Shechem and settling in Shechem? You swore an oath that if you're returned intact, you're going to be, the stone that you set up in Beis El will be a house of God. So Hashem said to Yaakov, go to Beis El, dwell there, make an altar there. You should be bringing offerings in Beis El, where you swore an oath that will be your place of worship to Hashem. And the Malbim says that Hashem was telling him that that's why this incident happened. This incident happened to him because he didn't go straight to Beis El on his return to the land of Israel safely, and he didn't return to go right there as he swore, but instead went to settled by Shechem. Okay, and it says here that on the bottom that Devorah. Oh, so In verse 4, so they gave to Yaakov all the alien. In verse 2, Yaakov told his household, discard the alien gods that are in your midst, meaning they had just plundered the city of Shem. So he told them, even these like idols that aren't really, they're not problematic to have because the people who owned them before even disavowed them. But you get rid, we're going to a holy place, get rid of them. They don't belong there. And that's what they did. Yaakov buried them. And in verse 5, they set out and there fell a godly terror on the cities which are around them, so that they did not pursue Yaakov's sons, even though Yaakov wiped out this, even though his sons wiped out the city of Shem, the Shem caused a terror to the surrounding people that they didn't pursue them. Okay, so that's where he went. He went to Beis El, he built an altar there. And then it says in verse 8 that Devorah, the wetness of Rivka, died, and he was buried below Beis El and called it Alon Bachus. So I say to say that at this point, Rivka died as well, and that's hinted to in the language of the pasuk that Rivka died as well here. And then it continues in 189. Then and Hashem appeared to Yaakov again when he came from Padan Aram, and he blessed him. And I say to say that since Rivka had just died, so he appeared to him as to comfort him, the way that we visit a mourner to comfort them, because Rivka had just died.
Seir was a person.
Seir was a person who Esav, yes. It's both. So Seir was the territory of the family of Seir. So he was a person that Esav, yeah, right. Yes, so that's coming up, right. And Esav actually married into his family, as we'll see there. Yes.
Because I know Esav is so completely dead ended that.
Right, and if you look on page 197, it has a genealogy table with a chart, and you'll see Seir at the top, and Esav married Aholibama, who was a daughter of Anna, who was from Sivon, who was the son of Seir. So he married into a grand grade. Yeah, son, he married a great granddaughter of Seir. Yeah, okay. Yes, okay. So let's just finish the Parsha. So then in verse 16 on page 189, they journeyed from Beis El. There was a stretch of land to go to Ephrath when Rachel went into labor and had difficulty in her childbirth. And it was when she had a difficulty in her labor, the midwife said to her, have no fear, for this one too is a son to you. And it came to pass as her soul was departing, for she had died. She died in childbirth. And she called his name Ben-Oni, but his father called him Binyamin. Thus Rachel died and was buried on the road to Ephrath, which is Vayishlach. So the Ramban says, one thing the Ramban says here at the timing of Rachel's death is that Rachel and Leah were sisters. And there's a prohibition in the Torah against marrying sisters. So the Torah wasn't given yet, but he says that our patriarchs, they understood the mitzvahs of the Torah just from they understood the spiritual nature of the world and understood that. And the Torah prohibits marrying two sisters. And outside the land of Israel, before the Torah was given, so spiritually outside the land of Israel would have been okay. But once they were in the land of Israel, so it couldn't continue. And since now he returned from where he was living in Aram, he returned to Israel, Rachel died because he couldn't. The two sisters couldn't be married to the same man. She was buried on the road. Okay, so now he continued to Migdal Eder. It came to pass while Israel dwelled in that land that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard. So I say to say that it doesn't mean literally that Reuben had relations with Bilhah. What happened was that when Rachel died, which just happened here, Rachel died during the birth of Binyamin. So Reuven was the eldest son of Yaakov, son of Leah. He always resented that Rachel was the favorite wife, that his mother wasn't given the same love that Rachel was given. Now that Rachel died, he thought, so that now she's out of the way, so now my mother will be the main wife of Yaakov, and she'll get all the love. But instead, Yaakov moved his bed into Bilhah's tent, which was the maidservant of Rachel. So that was too much for Reuven, and he then took Yaakov's bed out of that tent and moved it into Leah's tent. And that's what Reuven did. That was getting involved in his father's marital life. And that's what he was criticized for. And Israel heard, and it continues, the sons of Yaakov were 12. Even after this incident, he wasn't excluded. He wasn't like he was kicked out of the family. He was still one of the sons of Yaakov. And it goes through who the family was. And then we have another death here, which is kind of a part of the theme here, where we saw that Rivka died and Devorah died. Now, in verse 27, Yaakov came to Yitzchak, his father, at Mamre, Kiryas Arba, that is Hebron, where Avram and Yitzchak sojourned. Yitzchak's days were 180 years, and Yitzchak expired and died. He was gathered to his people, old and fulfilled of days. His sons, Esav and Yaakov, buried him. Okay, and our sages say here that Esav and Yaakov buried him was a very good sign. That means that Esav allowed, I'm sorry, I'm confusing somewhere else. Okay, so, but Esav and Yaakov buried Yitzchak. Okay, so continuing on, and so the Parsha really ends with the chronicles of Esav and the genealogy of Esav and Seir. That and it goes through their whole and in verse 8 you see Esav settled on Mount Seir, Esav he is Edom. So you see that's where Esav went to Mount Seir, the place, and it goes through his descendants, and in verse 20 you have, and these are the sons of Seir the Chorite who are settled in the land: Lota, Shaval, Tzivon, Ana, Dishan, Ezer, Dishan. And sons of Lota, Chemam, Lota's sister was Timnah. Sons of Shoval, Alva, Menachem, Evo, Shepho, and Onam. See if I can find them. And in verse 25, these are the children of Anna, Dishon and Aholibama, daughter of Anna. That was the wife of Esav that was referenced before. The Aholibama, who was Esav's wife, who was a descendant of Seir. That's where the connection between Esav and Seir came. And they lived in the house of and they lived in the land, the mountain of where the Seirites. And then in 197, the Torah gives the Edomite kings who reigned in the land of Edom, before a king reigned over the children of Israel. So it gives and remember, Edom were the descendants of Esav. So it gives the Edomite kings, and that concludes really the story of Esav as given in the Torah. And our sages say that this is a pretty lengthy piece, but what it's telling us is it's a lengthy piece of just like a chapter in the Torah that goes through, pretty much lists the descendants of Esav. But then when it continues, and on page 199, it goes into the story of Yaakov. It's a lot more than just a few chapters. It goes into detail about Yaakov's life and Yaakov's descendants' lives throughout the rest of the Torah. And it's to show us, he compares it to someone who's, let's say, panning for, or someone lost a diamond and searching for it in the dust. So what do? They go through, like, they get like a bucket of all the rocks there and go through rock by rock by rock by rock until finally they find the diamond. And that's what happens here. They're going like rock by rock. Here's this Esav, this descent of Esav, this descent of Esav, this descent of Esav, but just until finally we come to the rock, to the stone, to the diamond. We come to Yaakov, and there it really goes into detail about his life, because that's really what's important to the history and destiny of the world. Okay, shkoyach.